Ahoy everyone! With the launch of Season 8 in Sea of Thieves, I always get asked if I have any tips for PvP, so I thought I'd create a tutorial on how to master the sloop. It's the smallest ship out there, most often at a disadvantage. However, if you follow these tips, you can become deadly. Tip number 1, chemistry and communication. The way you communicate with your crew is everything. A lot of the time, sloop crews end up sinking because they get overwhelmed and panicked when they're in a sticky situation. The trick here is to stay cool, calm and collected, and knowing your priorities when it comes to repairs. If you start panicking and going, "Oh my god, we're gonna sink," then it's likely gonna make your crewmates start panicking too. Know your roles, limit comms to only important information during a tough fight. One of you can be bucketing and repairing down below whilst the other is trying to raise the anchor or raise the mast and watching for boarders. Good comms would be like this. Oh, boarder left side, they're on board, hit them once, they're coming down below to you, etc. Bad comms would be like this. Oh my god, there's a boarder! Wait, did you get him? No, there's a boarder! Did you not see him? Have you killed him yet? Kill him! Oh my god, right, he's going downstairs right now, get him! Oh my god, right, can you just listen to me? Tip number 2, be interchangeable. What I mean by this is don't tell your crewmate, "Oh, I only helm," or "I'll just stay on cannons. Cannons is what I'm best at." A solid crew can understand the entire ship and has a basic knowledge in helming, cannoning, boarding, repairing, and PvP. Say you start the fight on helm because your crewmate is better at cannons than you. If they go over to board the enemy ship, then you need to be comfortable to jump straight on that cannon to keep the pressure. And if they die over there, then you stay on the cannons because you're going to be more locked in than them. And when your crewmate respawns, they can jump on repairs and helm for you. Being interchangeable like this means that you keep constant pressure on your enemies, making you more deadly. So don't just limit yourself to one certain role on the sloop. Tip number 3, angle. The way you approach a fight is everything. Ideally, you want to get the enemy ship nosed into your broadside. This means that their bow is pointing right at your cannons and they don't have any cannon angle on you. This isn't always possible at the start of fights, depending on the angle of both ships and depending on the size of the ship as well. If it's a galleon, they might be faster. But if you aim to get them into your broadside at some point during the fight, it makes hitting chain shots and landing deck shots so much easier. The easiest way to get a ship to nose into your broadside is by anchoring or chain shotting them to stop them moving and then sailing in front of them. Once you do that, it's going to be very difficult for the enemy crew to recover. Also, never sail directly into another ship's broadside, unless you have a death wish. Tip number 4, positioning. Building on the last tip, positioning is also equally important. You never want to let the enemy ship sail in front of you, as it's going to be really easy for them to get you in their broadside. If it's a sloop v sloop fight, I tend to raise sails to half-mast during the fight, as enemy sloops aren't really quick enough to escape if you've got pressure on them, and also it makes your cannons a lot easier to aim and control. Then you want to aim to chain shot their mast down. If you're fighting a brig, you're going to want a little more speed, as brigs are just super fast these days, so the earlier you can chain shot them, the better, and keep your sails fully down until you start to get in front of them. If you're fighting a galley, well then you're if you're fighting a galleon, always have full sails on the broadside and use blunderbombs to hit the enemies off cannons. Once you're out of their cannon angle or you're around the front or back of the galleon, raise your sails halfway so you have longer to hit them whilst they can't hit you. Tip number 5, cannon aim. Which way you aim your cannons is really important. If it's a sloop v sloop, initially you want to be aiming towards a cannon line to hopefully one ball and kill the enemy firing cannons back at you. Once you've done that, or at least you've got a few hit markers on the enemy player, whilst they're going to be eating because they're low on health, you can focus on staying locked into that angle on your cannons and then firing 2 chain shots to demast them. Always try and get the mast down first so that you have the advantage on your enemies. Then you want to aim for the low holes to go for the sink. Tip number 6, angle over mast. Another general mistake I see happening is people freaking out when their mast goes down on their sloop and raising it immediately. You want to always keep your angle on the enemy ship. Prioritize this over raising your mast. Think about it, if you both rush to raise your mast, then the enemy can spam you with blunderbombs or cannonballs. You could both end up dying or popcorned off your ship, which you might end up sinking because of that. However, if you say, oh well, there goes my mast, but you keep the cannon angle on your enemies, then you're still going to be keeping that pressure on them, and you could actually pressure them enough into having to pull out of the fight, or even better, you might be able to even kill one of them with cannons. Once they pull out of the fight to repair, or they stop firing so much, that's the point in which you should raise your mast again. Tip number 7, mast repairs. Kind of following on from the previous tip, back in the day it only took one change shot to knock down the sloop's mast, so you could get away with only putting 1 or 2 planks on to repair it. However, now it takes 2 change shots to hit your mast down, and 1 change shot will actually crack your mast twice, so you need to make sure that you put in 3 wooden planks on your mast each time you repair it. Otherwise it's only going to take your enemy 1 change shot to get your mast down again, unless you repair it fully. Tip number 8. Control via sails. A more advanced tip for helming is that you can actually control your speed and rotation around enemy ships, not via the wheel, but actually through your sail length. Say you have your sails halfway and your wheel is turned a little bit to the right, and say the enemy ship is too far to the right and you can't reach it with your cannons, you don't have the angle on it. Instead of turning the wheel, you can actually just raise your sails until you get into the angle again, and then drop your sails to half once you have angle, and that'll keep the nice rotation going around it. Same thing as if you get in too close to the enemy ship. The longer your sails are, the wider the circle of rotation will be. So if you only have your sails down a slight bit, then you're likely going to end up ramming them or getting too close to the enemy ship, which will allow them to board and get an advantage on you. Keeping your sails approximately halfway down is the sweet spot. However, as a helm, you are constantly going to be adjusting your sail length and wheel until you find that perfect rotation. Tip number 9, anchor turns in emergencies. Anchor turns can be a good last resort if you desperately need to escape a bad situation, or if you want to quickly do a 180 to get back into a fight after repairing to keep that pressure. But honestly, you never really need to use your anchor. If you do drop anchor, you are risking a lot because your enemies can easily just aim cannons and blunderbombs at you while you're trying to raise it again, and it's very easy to keep an anchor down on a ship once it's dropped. You never want to be stood still during a fight, you always want to be on the move and rotating around other ships. So next time you think about anchor turning, just think about this risk. Tip number 10, harpoons. I actually love harpoons, and they can actually make or break a fight when used properly. Not only can you harpoon rocks, structures, or the seabed in shallow water to get a quick new angle on enemy ships, but you can also use them to harpoon your enemies off the cannons and then one blunder them. And trust me, it's very disorientating being on the other side of this. If you're an enemy and you suddenly get harpooned off your own ship, it just sends them into so much confusion. It's actually really funny. So they're really good for little trick shots like this, and it can give you an advantage in a fight. Also, you can harpoon onto an enemy ship if they start peeling out of a fight, and you can force them to stay close to you while you're hitting them with cannons. Tip number 11, the death spiral. This is where you have your enemy ship immobilized either by the anchor or by chain shots, and you steadily rotate around them in a circle while pounding them with cannonballs. Whenever I helm this, I start with full sail if it's a bigger ship, or half sail if it's a sloop, and my wheel either cranked a little bit to the left or the right, depending what side the enemy ship is on. Once we have the other ship immobilized, I raise sails immediately, because if not, we're going to fly straight past them and out of angle, since the other ship isn't rotating with us anymore. So you want to keep that angle, and then once you have it again, lower the sails to half and steadily start to rotate around the enemy ship. Grab some repairs as and when you can, and keep checking back to make sure that you're not losing that angle. You might need to adjust your wheel and sails a few times before you find that perfect rotation. Also, whilst doing this, the helm can also try to snipe any enemies on the cannons every now and then. Even if you miss, it just keeps the pressure on the enemy ship. Use blunderbombs when they have an angle on you to knock them off the cannons, or peace balls as well to stop them firing. And when you feel you've got enough pressure on that other ship, then one of you can go for a board. If you know that they are close to sinking and all of them are bucketing, then you should be using blunderbombs to disorientate your enemies and hopefully cause one of them to backsplash their own water and confirm the sink. Tip number 12, throwables and chain shots. Make use of all your supplies. Chain shots, blunderbombs and firebombs are all great for different situations. Chain shots you want to aim towards the crossbar on the mast, so even if you miss the vertical section of the mast, there is a chance that you still might hit the horizontal section of it. Blunderbombs are really good to knock your enemies off cannons and to prevent your enemies from repairing and cause them to backsplash their buckets, as we talked about in the last tip. Firebombs I rarely use except if it's a galleon. Try and aim for the cannons or the helm, as fire spreads so quickly on the helm of a galleon, which is great to overwhelm your enemies. If you have fire on the cannons, this means that any players that are on the cannons on the enemy ship will also set on fire, and that's going to slowly reduce their health, making it easier to kill them with cannons or by sniper shots from your helm. Tip number 13, don't carry kegs. This will happen if you carry kegs. I literally have countless clips of me dying to kegs. They're dangerous, they're not worth the risk, and they're just stupid. Unless you want to have some fun and don't care about your ship sinking, I wouldn't recommend having them on board. You don't get much gold from selling them, and if you have them on your deck, then it's just going to give you a lot of holes if it explodes. And I see a lot of you thinking that you can get around that by just having them in your crow's nest. Well, you're also wrong. This just makes it easier to snipe your crow's nest and then it'll demast you. It's not worth it. Don't do it for reals. Just tip number 14, repairs. Sometimes ships take a hole and I see people going to repair it immediately. You don't have to do this. Bottom deck holes will fill up faster than holes on your second deck on a sloop, so if you take a few second deck holes, just don't worry about them, they're fine. It's actually more efficient sometimes to just grab a few buckets every minute than to spend every single time constantly repairing the holes. Whilst you're there repairing every hole, you could be on the top deck checking that you still have angle on the enemy, adjusting your sails, adjusting your helm, trying to snipe the cannoneers and all of this other stuff that you could be doing. I'd say if you get 4 to 5 holes, that's when I tend to start repairing up a few, but for the most part I just focus on keeping angle and pressure and just grabbing a few buckets every now and then. Number 15, organisation. There's a few things that you can do to make your life easier when in battle. One of which is keeping your supplies organised. I tend to have the good food in the top barrel like pineapples, mangoes, pomegranates and cooked food, and I keep bananas, any uncooked food, any bait, and I know this causes controversy, but I do demote the coconuts to the bottom barrel as well. This means that if you urgently need to grab some food in battle, you know that you're not going to get something bad like a banana out of it. You're going to always get something good if you go in the top barrel. And you can literally just spam F to pick everything up rather than having to click and find on the good food with your mouse. It just saves time. I keep cannonballs, chain shots and blunderbombs in the top barrel as well, as I use them the most. Curse cannonballs, firebombs, fireworks, anything like that goes in the bottom barrel. Other little things I do is I keep a cannonball crate of 50 cannonballs in the middle of the ship between both cannons just for quicker reloading. And also, as a helm, I like to keep a crate of 50 wood by my helm, just in case my wheel or my mast gets snapped. You don't want to realise, like, once you've been demasted that you have no wood and you have to waste time going below deck. It doesn't sound like much, but a few seconds can really quickly add up in the middle of a fight and it can make or break your battle. Also, don't keep all your supplies in a storage crate. Enemies can easily steal it if they board you, or if you sink, your enemies are going to have a whole storage crate full of supplies, whilst you're going to respawn with nothing. Keep your stuff in your barrels. That way, if you can't access your supplies, nobody can. Tip number 16, cannon rowboats. These things can be a game changer. You can find them randomly around the Sea of Thieves on different islands, dock it to the back of your ship, and boom! Now both you and your teammate can fire at the enemy ship. Just try to keep the enemy ship on the side in which your cannon rowboat is facing, otherwise it's not going to help that much. Number 17, captain ships. Always try to sail and fight with a captain ship. Once you've reached the requirements and you have enough gold to purchase your own ship, then do it. This unlocks so many perks, such as being able to quickly buy good food, planks, cannonballs, and more from the shipwright. This makes it so much faster to get into battle as you spend less time stocking up. Tip number 18, when to board. You should know when to board and when to stay on your ship. If the enemy ship starts to peel out of the fight, then that means that they could be hurting pretty bad and are very close to sinking. So at that point, it is a good attempt to try and board at this point. Even if you don't make the board, you can still throw blunderbombs to mess up with their bucketing and also try to snipe people from the water. Try to only board when necessary. Don't both shoot out if your ship has holes or if you haven't got your ship in a rotation, as you could end up sinking or just sailing way out of range. Number 19, cosmetics. A lot of cosmetics in Sea of Thieves look so good, but that doesn't mean that they perform good in battle. There's a few sails that will give you a slight advantage on visibility, such as the Dark Adventure sails or the Kraken sails. No bias, I think the Kraken sails are pretty good. Similar to that, cannon skins are really important. Don't use any of these cosmetics as they are so chunky, and you can clearly see the difference in how much of the screen is taken up by the cannons. I tend to stick to default cannons or golden sailor cannons. In terms of the wheel, try to go for wheels which don't have a massive plant sticking out of them, or ones where the top of the wheel isn't visibly different to the rest of the spokes. You can use the Sea Dog bucket if you have to bucket out water, as it makes it super easy to see when you have water in your bucket and knowing that you're not going to get an accidental backsplash. Finally, don't use crazy cannon flares like these, unless you really enjoy headaches and the thrill of not knowing where you are aiming your cannons. If you really want to use a flare, try to use the cutthroat ones, as the visible effects don't last as long and doesn't impact gameplay as much. This also goes for your weapon skins. Try to use more basic designs of weapons instead of big chunky weapon designs, as it takes up more of your screen. Finally, tip number 20. It's okay to sink. Everybody sinks in this game. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing either. Not one good PvP player out there got to where they were without sinking and learning valuable lessons. And it's all about practicing and trying it out. Try to understand where you went wrong in battle and be a better pirate for next time. Don't be upset about how many hours you put into this massive loot stack that you've just lost. Understand that this game has both risk and reward, and only ever carry the amount of loot on your ship that you are okay losing. Loot isn't yours until you've sold it, and if you try to change your mindset to this, it really helps you to have a more positive reaction to sinking. Stay with me, Flag!
Stop calling them by names, like you named them or something like.
Come on, Flaggy! Thank you for watching. I hope these tips help you guys in your battles on the seas. Let me know in the comments if there's any other tutorials you'd like me to make, and as always, have a cracking good day.